You're listening to the Never Heard of It podcast,
a Night Shift Radio original. Every week we bring you the good,
the bad,
the weird,
and lesser known streaming movies.
Hit subscribe for new episodes every Thursday and Sunday. Yeah, so here we are, another bonus episode on YouTube. And for those of you listening over on your podcast player of choice, hey, thanks a lot for subscribing. Caleb's doing the thing again where I have to move the buttons everywhere. You jerk. So we're here over on YouTube. If you're listening again on your podcast player of choice, don't forget to hit subscribe there. But hey, if you want to see us talk about stuff, then you want to head on over to nsrad.io/YouTube and check it out. You can watch us talk about things.
I imagine when the icon pops on the screen, it goes ding.
Yes, it does. Well, it doesn't make a noise, but it can make a noise. So now it has to make a noise because you said that. Cool. This is where we're at. This works for you. Yeah. So what was like 20 minutes of editing became like 3 hours of editing because Caleb's like, what if there also was fireworks when I said? Like, God damn it.
What if I come riding in on a motorcycle?
And you just animate that in. I'd be like, yeah, I'll get right on that. It's crazy. I actually put a little bit of a warning in the front of this video, but for those of you listening, you didn't get that warning. So here it is. We are going to talk about Thor: Love and Thunder, and we are going to talk about Ms. Marvel, and we are going to spoil both.
Spoilers!
Exactly.
That clipped way more easily than I expected it to.
Yeah.
the waveform is like an inch and a half just solid blue on my screen.
That's funny. Yeah, so we are going to spoil both of those things, but we're going to start off with Thor: Love and Thunder, which is now out in theaters. It's still part of Phase 4. Of all the movies, I guess I almost was going to be like, this is the only original Avenger movie, but I mean, technically it is because Doctor Strange and Wanda aren't original Avengers. No, they're like second half Avengers. But this would be, this is, Thor. He's one of the OG ones. And of course, Taika Waititi is back directing and writing this one, among other writers, but Taika Waititi did write this one. So upfront review, I fucking love this movie.
Oh my God, it was so much fun.
It was so fun.
And that's just what I've come to associate with Taika Waititi for the most part. Is like he tells a great story and like can get you in the feels when he needs to, but his shit is just fun.
Yeah.
It has a lightness to it that like, listen, a lot of this shit can get real heavy, and like DC fell into that trap real hard with the Snyderverse and with like every Batman movie ever.
Yeah.
Since '66, of course. Because even the fucking 90s campy ones are still like, they're trying to be dark. They're just bad at it.
Yeah, they just didn't do a good job, but they tried.
And, so there's there's that end of the spectrum where it's just way too dark and gritty and I'm justice or whatever, vengeance. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum, of course, Adam West, who is still near and dear to my heart. But somewhere in the middle is some just really fun storytelling, and Taika Waititi is doing it.
I know that a lot of the criticism of this movie in particular is people are like, it was too silly, or like people said that like they made a joke of the character Thor. And I'm like, yeah, but even from Phase 1, he was always, very cartoonish.
It's like he kind of was the comic relief of the Avengers for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, and later on you get like you Peter Parker, and there's silly moments in most of the shows. Like there are other characters that fill that role, but pretty much since the beginning of this Avengers cycle, it's been Thor. And like, why now you suddenly realize that and get mad about it? Like, you need to rethink the last like 12 plus years.
Yeah. I think all of the characters, now lend to some sort of, Marvel has kind of gone with the brevity, the lightness of some of them. I mean, even though there are some very serious subjects in some of their movies, and, even arguably Doctor Strange, although went a horror route, still was silly. There was some silly moments in that movie. There's still some funny, Wong Wong is just hilarious. Like, Wong is very funny, and there's a lot of great scenes with Wong in Doctor Strange 2 that are funny. And I think that that's a thing that people, I don't know, forget, or I don't know why they thought Thor Love and Thunder would be anything different after Ragnarok.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, Ragnarok set the tone, and I'm still trying to figure out why people hated the Dark World so much, and then, you know, Ragnarok comes along and everyone seemingly was really into that. And I think, and largely because it was a huge tonal shift. And really leaned into the fun that this character could have.
Totally.
And so why would you not? Why would you follow that up with really stuffy Thor?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want that? Why would you want a serious Thor story?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Hemsworth pulls off it. A Thor,
Aetherius Thori.
Aetherius Thori. No, another classic Thor adventure. I love that they kind of repeated that line throughout. Like, they kept being like, it's another classic Thor adventure. Now, I will say, so here's my criticism of Thor: Love and Thunder, and it's not Thor. It's actually the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
That whole scenes in the beginning of the movie with the Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, obviously, you know, James Gunn came out and said this, and Taika Waititi came out and said this, that they never actually spoke to each other about, like, James Gunn didn't write the Guardians of the Galaxy for Thor, which sometimes happens, right? Because I know that James Gunn did that for the Avengers movies. He came in and kind of not necessarily wrote, but guided how the Guardians of the Galaxy should act.
Well, and that kind of makes sense because in Infinity, what was the first one called?
Infinity War.
It was Infinity War.
Was
I started to say
War.
Infinity War, and they're like, wait, was it Infinity?
You're like, that can't be right. Yeah. I think it was originally quoted as Infinity Gauntlet Part 1 and 2.
So Infinity War and Endgame really were almost like serials. They were a bunch of stories that were all coming together. So it made sense to have those be written by different people to keep the cohesion that we'd seen from the buildup of these characters, bringing them all together to tell one story. But when they're separate, it makes sense in particular to have their story feel more like how they got there. Now that that's done, and we're starting to see back into individual stories and cameo appearances, and we're a little bit scattershot because we haven't reached the ultimate big bad yet. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, so my complaint, I guess, really lies in the fact that they didn't feel like themselves. Like, every time they, especially Chris Pratt in Star-Lord, he didn't feel like he didn't talk like Star-Lord up until maybe the last line that he says. But I was like, this is weird. Everything feels weird.
Let me tell you why I'm okay with that. Because the way that Love and Thunder is presented, it's essentially as though what we're getting is a chance to see acted out a narration that's being told by, what is Taika's character name? Korg. Korg, yes,
Hi, my name's Korg.
Korg is telling the epic tales of his buddy Thor, the space Viking. He is the narrator for this movie and is filling us all in. So we've seen how Korg interacts with other characters and how he's not always up to speed on what's happening,
right?
And that's part of what makes him so lovable. So to me, it makes perfect sense that the other characters wouldn't feel quite right because it's Korg telling them rather than us really seeing what happens. That whole big battle where Thor's meditating and then he comes and joins and he's like, aha, I'm here to another classic Thor adventure. This ends today. All this stuff. It felt like all of the other characters kind of felt like wooden and kind of almost like background props, and that makes sense because this is Korg talking about his buddy's epic adventure, and then everyone else was just there.
I didn't think of it that way, and now that you say it, it does make total sense. I do think it's very interesting, though, non-criticism aside, that we got a glimpse at the of what we're going to see for the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as to what the team is. So, obviously, a big big addition in Crag, who is Sean Gunn, with what's his name's thing. So his little mohawk thing. So I thought that was really cool. Seeing Nebula there with like her cool badass jacket. Like seeing that Guardians of the Galaxy made me really excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But the next thing we get of them will be the Christmas special this year.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
So what confused me about the Guardians being in this is because the way that they set up at the end of... was it at the end of Ragnarok or at the end of Infinity where he actually Thor goes off and joins the Guardians?
Well, that would be at the end of Endgame.
Endgame. Thank you. Sorry. I don't fucking know what the hell I'm talking about.
What does
any of this mean? What does any of this mean?
What is any of this?
At the end of Endgame, when Thor goes off, like it's kind of implied that the whole like the Asgardians of the Galaxy or like Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy, like they're gonna go and have lots of adventures, and we see a little bit of that. But I assumed the next Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be a Guardians movie with Thor. But instead, the next Thor movie was a Thor movie with Guardians, and it seems like they'll probably move on without him, since that's not next, but like a couple in line, because we got Black Panther.
Black Panther's in November.
Forever,
yep.
And then Ant-Man and the Wasp. I forgot there was going to be another one of those.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, which is where we're actually getting Kang the Conqueror. He is in that movie. That's confirmed that he is the big bad in that movie.
About time, because
it is about time.
At that point, like we're almost at the end of Phase 4, because after Ant-Man, it's Guardians Volume 3, The Marvels, and Fantastic Four as far as what's currently slated, and that's sometime roughly this time next year, maybe a little bit later when Fantastic Four actually comes out, and like Phase 4 is done, so like they're really taking their time getting to Kang.
They are, yeah. So I want to talk about Thor: Love and Thunder. Again, spoilers about this. So there's a couple of things. So one, I've been wondering how they were going to approach the fact that we have been introduced to gods, plural. Yeah. Because, we had all of the Egyptian gods introduced to us in Moon Knight. Mm-hmm. In Eternals, we had the Celestials, which I would say are among godlike, which we kind of got confirmed in Thor, because we do in fact see Celestials attend this god party, which was
dope.
So cool. And we know that in Thor, from Thor 1, that the Viking gods, we have the Odin, the Lokis, all those sort of people, like Laffy, all those people, like we know that they exist. So we knew that they were multiple gods. So I was very curious to see how they were going to bring it into the MCU. And I thought this was great, because the simple explanation is just like, no, they all exist. And like, your God is your God. But then there's this, the people over there that are worshiping, and I thought this is a really cool nod, the Maori god. Well, that's their god. And, you have the Greek gods? Well, those are their gods. Like, you have the Viking gods? Those are their gods. Like, everybody had their own, and they all existed at the exact same time and all had orgies together, which,
I mean, that tracks.
That's what you do. I mean, when you're an omnipotent being, you get your omnipotent being on. I don't know what that means, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. And of course, like we know already that the gods exist in Marvel Comics, so it was really cool to see how the MCU incorporates them. Of course, big name like Zeus in charge.
Zeus,
who was just delightful. So funny.
So Zeus was played by Russell Crowe, and the great thing about this is
that was Russell Crowe.
That was Russell Crowe. And the great thing is they actually recorded all of his lines twice, because Taika Waititi couldn't decide, him and Russell Crowe couldn't decide which accent they wanted to go with. So they recorded all of his scenes twice with two different accents and ended going with the Greek accent that he has in the film, because they were like, we don't know which way we want to play it. Because I guess they played it more of like a, English accent, and then they did the Greek one. And I love that they went with the Greek.
That makes so much more sense, because I mean, like, it's entirely too often you see, like, in any kind of fantasy, just like the default is just make them English.
Yeah.
But like, listen, Listen, the most celebrated event in the entire world across 65 countries, I think. Like the single most celebrated event, independence from Britain. We don't need to make everyone English.
We don't need it. They don't want it. We don't need it. Yeah, I think his character is absolutely hilarious. I was very, very pleased with Russell Crowe's portrayal of it. I was very pleased with the way they wrote him, where he's this flashy, like, look, man, you don't mess with Zeus, eh? You know, and I loved that he's just like this obese swinger dude, you know, who's just a show off at this point. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Great addition, you know, obviously.
We'd still get a hint at like how powerful he could actually be.
Sure.
Which is really cool. I mean, like it's a big, you know, a god fight essentially between Thor and Zeus, which is pretty epic.
Yeah, and that was a really great fight. I just, you saw it in the trailer where he flicks off Thor's disguise and then Thor's standing there naked. Hilarious scene. Yes. Great. And then that whole battle scene is just great. I loved all of that, but I want to talk about Jane Foster.
Okay.
I love that they did the cancer storyline like it is in the comics. I think it was an interesting, again, spoilers. I think this was an interesting take to kill her and not keep her around any longer. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean she's gone forever. No one's really ever gone forever.
Yeah, no one really dies in the comics.
I mean, they even make the joke in the movie, but how many times Loki died? They're like, and even the loss of his brother, and the loss of his brother again, and the loss of the death of his brother again.
But like, I like that because I feel like if they didn't let her die at the end, it kind of cheapens the idea of her like making the choice for herself. Like, she has cancer. She thinks that Mjolnir might save her, and like it gives her the powers of Thor and makes her feel better in the short term, but it drains her body's energy and ability to fight the cancer
because she's immortal.
Speeding up, yeah, because she's not a god, and so it's she's worthy, but she's not physically like capable of handling all that power, and so she has the choice to rest and try to fight the cancer as immortal and stay out of the larger battle for the safety of the universe, or she can take up the power again and, knowing that she will probably die from it, go and be like get a chance to be a hero. And I like that they give her that choice, and I like that she takes it and they don't take that away from her. Agreed.
That was there was a point in the movie where I was like, are they going to Manic Pixie Dream Girl like the mighty Thor? Like, come on. But then like when she has her big heroic moment, I was like, there it is. Like, okay, we're good. Like they redeemed it. Cause at the moment she sits out and it's the lesson Thor needs to learn. And I was like, oh man. And then when she shows up, I was like, yeah, mother kill.
And like, I've been wondering for a while, especially because we know that Tony and Cap are both gone, and Widow is gone, and Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye has got to be pretty close now that Kate Bishop is here. Like he's going to be, I think, more and more taking a backseat, and like all of the original Avengers are starting to phase out. So I almost thought that maybe they were going to try to set up a way of like actually phasing Hemsworth out and saying like, Jane's Thor now for the time being, or like maybe neither of them are, and maybe we get a surprise from like fucking Beta Ray Bill or some shit. Bill.
Yeah.
And so of course we're left without any answers there because Jane dies and Thor is still alive, and so like presumably another Thor was teased. If not, I think officially announced. Did they officially announce a Thor 5?
They didn't announce a Thor 5, but they did say Thor will return. I assume that means he's going to return in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is probably where we'll see him next.
But the best part about that, because we know that like, multiple Thors can and do exist, Thor will return in X tells us nothing.
Tells us nothing, right? And we now know that Thor is a title. I mean, we don't now know that. It literally was in the first movie when he says, "He whoever possesses this hammer shall have the power of Thor." So like, you're now a Thor. I get it. But yeah. So we don't know exactly where Thor is coming back. I would say it's a very safe bet he will make an appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I know that both Chris Hemsworth and Taika Waititi said that they would return for a Thor 5. Chris Hemsworth basically said he'll play Thor forever. And they said that they would return.
He's gotta be having a blast.
Right. And they said that they would return for a Thor 5, but nothing's been confirmed. I mean, publicly nothing's been confirmed. However, Taika Waititi said that he would do a Thor 5 only if it could be just like a normal story and no action whatsoever, which I think would also be really interesting, but people would be really pissed off.
I mean,
it would be hilarious, but like...
At this point, they're going to be pissed off no matter what. So just fucking tell the story you want to tell.
Just make your movie. Yeah. Gore the God Butcher, Christian Bale, absolutely fantastic in this. He was... Gore the God Butcher to me was scarier than anything that happened in Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think anything in Doctor Strange 2 was scary to begin with. I got that they were going for horror elements, but it wasn't scary to me. But this element of this person who has just been essentially infected by evil and is on a mission to not only is on a mission to kill all the gods, but has the ability to do it.
Yeah.
And is seemingly unstoppable. Like, that's a pretty big existential threat in the MCU. And when you find out what his actual target is, to fucking meet and get a wish granted from fucking eternity.
Right.
Wow!
And
they actually fucking went there. Like, I have been wondering forever now, like ever since they announced that they're doing the cosmic stories. I'm like, all right, well, of course, we know the Eternals is going to introduce us to Celestials, and Guardians introduced us to Ego, and like we've seen Nowhere and all this stuff. So, like, these characters are out there, so when do we meet Eternity?
Right. Well, and what if introduced us to the Watcher, who kind of lives in that same sort of world as Eternity. So like, it's there, like it's already there.
And it looked so fucking cool. Eternity is such a cool looking character. Always has been.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's always been one of my favorites of the celestial beings, this larger cosmic Marvel universe. And it did not disappoint. Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that. I think the addition of Eternity and all of that was absolutely fantastic. So again, like, Gore as the God Butcher as a villain was great because his motivation was, it was kind of that complicated story where it was like, yeah, I get why you're upset. Like, so the movie starts off with Gore the God, with Gore and his daughter, who is actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter in real life, by the way.
That was adorable when I found that out.
Yep. And they're, basically wandering through the desert. He prays to his specific God, basically being like, hey, we're the last of your people. We are dying here. Like help us. And, of course, his daughter ends up dying of, whatever, starvation, because they're wandering a desert. Yeah. He eventually gets to his God, who basically laughs in his face and is like, yeah, your job is to just worship me and die. Like, that's it. And then when you die, nothing happens. You are just dead. And he's like, I can't accept that. And laying at his feet is the Necro Sword, of which, he then possesses and kills that god. And then now he has a vendetta against all gods because he thinks that all gods are basically the same as this one, that they don't care about their people. They don't help their people, which we kind of learned is true in a big picture, but probably not individually true. Right.
Yeah. Not every god is like that in this story. I mean, specifically, we see that Thor is not, and like the Asgardians in general tend to be less complacent and more involved in the affairs of mankind, so to speak.
Sure.
But yeah, like on a macro scale, we really do get a sense that the gods just don't care.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, Zeus pretty much says that straight out. He even says like, hey, there's a meeting of all the gods in this very special area that only gods can get to. And he even says like, Gore the God Butcher is just killing all low-level gods. Like, we're fine here. We're going to chill here. Let him do whatever it is that he wants. We know that he wants to get to eternity and basically wish that, all gods die. They're like, but he can't get to it. What we learn is that the only way to get to it is he needs Thor's Stormbreaker to basically unlock the door to get to eternity.
Because Stormbreaker can do basically a portable Bifrost, which is badass.
Which is awesome. Yeah. So that's kind of what we learn. And then, he gets it. And that's where we get the crazy touching moment. We have dying Jane Foster, she used her last bit as Mighty Thor, Gore the God Butcher, his sword's defeated. He is dying without his sword. The sword basically infects him, and without it, he dies. And, he's at eternity, and, Thor and Jane are pleading to him, but like, look, like, we know what it is you really want. Like, your daughter is what you really want, not to kill these gods. Like, killing these gods won't bring her back, but this thing will bring her back. And then, of course, Gore is like, but she'll be all alone. And we get that wonderful moment where Thor are basically like, she won't be. Like, Thor promises to take care of this little girl. I know.
And he does.
And he does. And that's where we get our closing story, where Korg is telling another classic Thor adventure. And he says, and he took that young girl and he raised her like his own. And thus we did the adventures of love and thunder. Let me tell you, so I am a single dad with a young girl about the same age. She's about 10. This girl's about 11. Chris Hemsworth's daughter is about 11. So like, her and I were watching this movie, bawling our eyes out at the end of that movie, being like, "It's awesome!" It was great. It was such a great ending, and I loved how heartwarming it was. And it was because you have the promise to Gore, you have the promise to this little girl, you have the promise to Jane Foster, she ends up getting into Valhalla, which was just awesome. Seeing Heimdall again.
She dies in glorious
battle as an Asgardian.
We get to see Heimdall's kid come into his own, which is great. And a little bit of lesson in how not to dead name people.
Yes, actually, that was really funny. I thought that was interesting.
Loved that. And we get a chance to see Thor kind of, for lack of a better term, grow up a little bit as well. Like, he realizes that he's got to be a little bit more responsible now that he's taking care of a child, but he does it. He leans fully into it, and it almost kind of comes full circle for him, because at the beginning he's so aimless, he's so lost, and now he definitively has a purpose. He's going to protect this child and the universe.
Yeah, which I think is just great. The end scene where we see them run out and they're both, attacking. He has Mjolnir again, the original Mjolnir, broken apart and fused back together, and she is wielding Stormbreaker, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, that looks badass. Also, the effect of the way that they used the Shattered Hammer, particularly the way that Jane, as Mighty Thor, uses it, where she throws it and the pieces split out into individual projectiles and all come back together. Like, that was kudos to the VFX team. That was badass.
That was so badass. All of Jane Foster being Mighty Thor was just so cool. I would say, if anything, I wish we got more Valkyrie, but how can you when you already have Thor and Jane Foster kind of really, using the screen time well.
And I'm glad that she was a big part of it, because she's such an important character and so great, but also it's not her story. So
it's not.
It makes sense that there isn't more of her. Although I would absolutely watch a full movie of just King Valkyrie.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. Even if it was House of Cards style, no action really, just straight up her being King Valkyrie. I would totally watch that.
There's Taika's next movie he can do.
That his next superhero just non-action movie.
Fully non-action drama around King Valkyrie.
I love it to death. So Thor Love and Thunder currently playing in theaters. Definitely check it out. Hey, what did you think of the movie? What do you guys think? Obviously, one of my biggest complaints right now about Phase 4 is that I don't feel the connection of all the movies. But I think it's only because we were told there was moving into Phase 4, and I don't feel it. I don't see it yet. Because I feel like everybody's living in their own universe, which would be fine if I think the precedent wasn't set that we're waiting for a big bad, right? Because that's kind of where I think they set the wrong expectation.
So I kind of have two not necessarily at odds thoughts about this. One, I think that a large part of why it feels disjointed is because they have like zoomed out to this massive scale, and just like going between points in space, it takes a long time to get there. And like, if you just look, oh, there's a star, there's a star, there's a star. Well, like how do they all fit together? You zoom out, like, oh, they're part of a fucking galaxy. It's kind of like that. I feel like if you really like zoomed way out from what we've seen so far of Phase 4, you'll start to see a cohesive whole start to develop. But the other side of that is I think that they're really doing most of the lifting in the TV shows. I think most of the connecting the dots and like introducing us to more grounded stories in the TV shows is how Phase 4 is going to come together. That's how I think about it, especially as you'll hear in our next episode when we talk about one of those shows.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I just think, we saw the collecting of people in Captain America or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then in Hawkeye, and then in the end of Black Widow. You saw that a thing was happening, but nothing else has happened in all of the other movies. So that's why it feels a little like, well, you started something, but you put out 4 other things that never even talk about it. So this is where I'm like, what is our story?
But also remember, it took how many years for phases 1 through 3?
Yeah, but we knew the one individual thing. We knew it was Thanos from the get-go. I mean, he was in the first Avengers movie, and that was, once they landed them. But we knew all the other movies.
We didn't know it from the get-go.
We didn't know that, but we did know that it was leading to the Avengers, because after Iron Man 1, at the very end, is a commercial for the Avengers. So we knew that every single movie, the Thor movie, the Iron Man movie, the Captain America movie, were leading to the Avengers. That's what we knew our end game was. But we don't have that with all of the movies. We have it with some, but not all of them.
We knew it in hindsight. We hoped for it in real time as we got Iron Man and then Hulk and Captain America, Thor, etc. As they're building. They told us there was going to be an Avengers, but we didn't know that. And even when we saw Thanos in the Avengers, we speculated that it was going to be an Infinity Gauntlet storyline, but we didn't know. And it really did take a long time assembling all of those pieces to be just right to come together in Infinity War and then subsequently Endgame. And so, we're now in essentially a rebuilding phase to something even bigger. And it would not shock me if it took at least another 2 to 3 phases to get to an ultimate endgame here, if they do it anyway similar to what they did in the first 3. So that's why, to me, I don't think we're off track at all. I think that COVID fucked a lot of timelines and made pushed it out farther than they wanted to be, but I don't think the story is off track.
I think there are several stories. I don't think there's one. I don't think there's a Thanos. I don't think King the Conqueror is everybody's story. I don't think Kate Bishop and Miss Marvel probably, but I don't think Kate Bishop. I don't think Yelena. I don't think Falcon and the Winter Soldier, new Captain America. I don't think any of those storylines are going to touch King the Conqueror at all. I don't think any of them will. That would make
sense for them.
I think it's just going to be Thunderbolts.
We know a lot of the kind of what they refer to as street level stories are coming back, and we're really seeing that, and they're Disney Plus is building really well on what Netflix did, laying the groundwork for that, and what we're gonna see that we just saw with Ms. Marvel and previously with Hawkeye. We're gonna see it coming up with She-Hulk. And with Echo, we know that Daredevil and Kingpin are coming back. So yeah, I agree that there's at least 2 big stories that are brewing. One that's going to feel more grounded here on Earth, and one that's going to be part of like the universe is at stake.
Yeah, I feel like that's where the Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, maybe. I think that's where all those things are going to go. But I think, you're right. Our non-supers are going to, the Kate Bishops, the Black Widows, the Captain America 4. I think, America Chavez maybe a little bit. I think they're all going to live in that ground level. Although I feel like America Chavez should show up in the Marvels. But
it absolutely would make sense for America Chavez to be part of a more like grand scale,
multi-dimensional
story, because that's literally what her powers are. So.
Yeah, literally. So I guess we'll see. So again, there it is for Thor. So we're actually going to make this a 2-part episode. Our next episode that comes out is going to be about Miss Marvel, and we are going to spoil that. So keep an eye out for that one. If you haven't hit subscribe yet on either your podcast player of choice or YouTube, make sure to do that where Caleb is pointing right now. Oh, he's moving. God damn. Yeah, so go ahead and make sure to do that, and then you can be tuned in for that. But until then, this coming Sunday, we have a brand new episode coming out and dropping. We're very excited about this one. We're actually talking about the Hulu movie The Princess, starring Joey King. Yeah. It's a really cool movie. Definitely check it out. Watch it over on Hulu if you're the type of person that likes to watch movies before we review them. You can watch it on Hulu. If not, check out our brand new review Sunday, wherever you get your podcast. So there it is, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you shortly for our next video, Miss Marvel.